Hey, welcome to Live from Dennis's House. Today we have a special treat. On the phone with us soon is going to be the legendary drummer Lenny White. Lenny White was in Return to Forever. He played with Miles Davis. He recorded the seminal classic Bitches Brew with Miles Davis, and he brought the drums to the forefront. He's another guy from Queens, New York. And without further ado, we're going to get to Lenny. But first, we're going to play a song from Lenny. We're going to play off his solo album, Venetian Summer, and we'll be right back with Lenny White. Hey, on the phone with us now is the great Lenny White, the legendary drummer and great guy who was born and raised in Queens, New York, just like I was. So now, let me ask you about, as being a little kid, growing up in Queens, New York, what were your influences? Like, what musically, who were your influences, and what got you started to saying, I want to play the drums?
Well, I mean, my dad and mom played records around the house all the time. So, the music was there. And, coming up, I listened to all kinds of music. I listened to the music that was on the radio, which was like, Benny King, the Drifters, the Posters, and, James Brown and stuff like that. And I also listened to show tunes, Broadway tunes, and I listened to jazz.
See, that's what the one thing that's common thread among all great musicians is that they have a varied taste. That if you just hear someone saying, "Oh no, I only like one type of music," they can't really be that evolved as a musician, I think.
Oh yeah, no, you have to listen and experience all kinds of music. If you're going to call yourself a musician, that's what a musician does. A musician plays all kinds of music.
Right.
Now, you could be a rock musician, you could be a jazz musician, you could be a classical musician. And, when you put that moniker in front of being a musician, then you really want to, or you make your career just playing that particular type of music. But for me, I wanted to be able to play all different kinds of music. I mean, when I got into playing music later on, music was changing. I mean, like it was morphing. There were a lot of different styles that were morphing together. They had roots in certain kinds of music, but then like this new hybrid music started to become popular, and so you had to be very well versed in all different kinds.
Right. Now, when you started playing the drums, like you were self-taught, right? You never took lessons?
Yeah.
And then, like, one of your first things you recorded, your first recordings that you were on, or of course, was the classic Bitches Brew by Miles Davis, which is, one of the most classic albums ever recorded. So, like, how did that come about that a young kid is playing drums with Miles Davis and, share some memories of that recording session, what Miles was like and all that?
Well, when I was 17, I had a record that Miles Davis did called 7 Steps to Heaven.
Right.
And I found out that the drummer on that record was 17 at the time that he recorded it, and that was Tony Williams.
Right.
So immediately I identified with him, and he became my guy. He became, like the person that I wanted to become or be able to do what he did. And so what he did was play with Miles Davis. And so Miles Davis being a hero for me, that's what my whole life was about. I wanted to be able to play with Miles Davis. So this happened at 17, and I kind of channeled all of those feelings and everything to be able to play with Miles. And then I played with Jackie McLean. And Tony Williams had played with Jackie McLean, and then he went on to play with Miles Davis. And Jack DeJohnette played with Jackie McLean, and then he went on to play with Miles Davis. And so everybody was saying, hey, well, you're playing with Jackie McLean, so now you're going to play with Miles Davis. I said, yeah, okay, whatever. And sure enough, that happened. And, I got a call to go into Columbia Studios and record with Miles. And it was like the first record that I had ever done, a real professional recording. And it was a very, very deep and rewarding experience. I was like a deer in headlights because I had all the guys that won this record I had listened to and knew about what they had done. And so now I was getting this opportunity to play with my hero and, to perform with all these other guys that I had been listening to. And I was a fan of all these guys.
Right.
So it was a real unique experience. And it was so mesmerizing and it impacted me so greatly that, like, we made that record 3 days. Well, it was 24 hours after Jimi Hendrix played the last note at Woodstock.
Wow.
And 69. And in October, I woke up out of a dead sleep and sat up in my bed and said, I recorded with Miles Davis. It took that long for it to hit me.
Right.
And because I realized that this wasn't something that, maybe I went to a club and sat in with Miles Davis and I would live the rest of my life saying, hey, well, I sat in and played with Miles Davis one night at the Village Vanguard or whatever. Right. No, this wasn't that. This was going to be a documented recording that was going to last way longer than I would last.
Yeah.
It would last for the rest of the world,
Yeah.
So it was really special for me.
And this is a masterpiece. Even if you never accomplished anything in your career after that, this is something that would go on forever. It's a classic album.
I'm very proud to be a part of that, definitely.
And so then, but what was Miles like in the studio? Did he's like, all right, you got to play this? Was he a taskmaster, or he just let you go?
No, he wasn't a taskmaster at all. I mean, he had a real idea of what he wanted to have happen. And we sat up in a semicircle, and he would start a groove, and then he would point to John McLaughlin, let John McLaughlin play, and we'd play, and then he would stop, and then we'd start up again, and then he would point to Wayne Shorter, let Wayne Shorter play. I mean, it was like that, and the only instruction that he gave me was that he said, think of this as a big pot of stew, and you're a spice, and I want you to, act like a spice. And so my concept was, we had done some rehearsals, and I didn't want it to sound like two drummers, competing against each other, two drummers and two percussion players. So I said, I really wanted it to be harmonious and to sound like one drummer that had 8 arms. And so that's why a lot of people listen to it and they say, well, are there 2 drummers on there? Oh, that doesn't sound like it. But yeah, they are.
That's amazing. So now, you mentioned Jimi Hendrix. Did you ever have a chance to meet him or play with him at any point?
Well, funny thing, what happened was, I was in such awe of Miles. After we had done Bitchy Brew, I was playing in a club with some friends, Steve Grossman and Dave Liebman and some other people. And Miles came to the club. And during the break, he took me in the back and he sat me down. He said, do you want to play with Jimi Hendrix? And I said, nah, because I was in such awe of Miles. I wanted to play with Miles. So I had an opportunity to do that, but I never did.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I regret it today, too.
Yeah, that would have been a great meeting, I'm sure. Yeah, a lot of people say that if he stayed alive, that he would have definitely been part of the jazz rock world, for sure. He was going in that direction.
Of course.
Yeah. That would have been...
I mean, he was one of the influences. I mean, the main influence for me was, and I think the father of fusion was Tony Williams.
Right.
And, the fact is, Tony had been listening to, Jimi Hendrix and James Brown and all these other people like Miles. And so when he came out with Lifetime in 1969, that was like the first. I mean, he had done stuff with Miles. They had done In a Silent Way and Miles in the Sky. Phillies de Kilimanjaro, they had experimented with things too. But when Lifetime came out, that was a real paradigm shift. And everybody was saying, wow, man, this is a new movement. And then Bitches Brew came out and solidified the movement, and everybody knew that this was the new direction of music.
Yeah, so that must have been like the most exciting time, creating a whole new genre of music, basically, you know, and then...
Oh, it was fantastic. It was fantastic because, you know, America was no longer innocent, and, you know, like new things were happening, and you know, there were upheavals in social consciousness, and, you know, artists were expressing themselves and saying, you know, we're not going to stand for this anymore. And they were expressing certain kinds of attitudes, changing attitudes within the music. You know, and it was happening in all kinds of music, not just pop. And, you know, there was no hip hop then. So.
Right. How did you guys get together and form Return to Forever?
Well, what happened was I had played with Joe Henderson, great saxophone Joe Henderson. I made a record called Red Clay with him and Freddie Hubbard. And,
right.
Ron Carter and Herbie Hancock. And after that, I worked with Freddie for a while. I mean, worked with Joe for a minute, and then went and played with Freddie Hubbard for a minute. And after I left Freddie Hubbard, I went and played with this group out in San Francisco that was kind of Latin rock group. It was like Blood, Sweat, and Tears meets Santana, called Azteca.
Right.
And Stanley Clark had played with me with Joe Henderson. And when I left, Stanley still played for a while, and then Chip came and played with Joe Henderson with Stanley. And so then they went and played with Stan Getz, along with Tony Williams. And they played that for a while. And then Stanley and Chip left and got Airto, Flora Purim, and Joe Farrell, and they did a record called Return to Forever. And I did two records, Return to Forever and then Light as a Feather. And while I was in San Francisco playing with Azteca, they were in Japan, and Chip called me from Japan and said, listen, I'm coming to San Francisco with Stanley. Would you do a trio with us for a week? And I was, you know, between times with Azteca. I said, yeah, sure. So we played at the Keystone Corner for a week in San Francisco, and it was fantastic music, and we felt really great about it. And the last night, two guitar players sat in. The two guitar players were from the Bay Area, Barry Finnerty and Billy Connors. And so Chick loved it. So after after we played that night, Chick pulled me aside and said, listen, I want to start an electric Return to Forever, and we'd like for you to be a part of it. And I was still up there with Azteca, so I said, no, I think I'm going to stay out here, Chick, and play with Azteca. So he went back to New York with Stanley and Bill Connors, and Steve Gadd played for a minute, about 6 months. In that 6-month time period that I was in San Francisco with Azteca, a manager by the name of Herbie Herbert came to me and said, listen, Ross Valerie and Neil Sean would like to do a session with you and play because they're thinking about, you know, starting this new band, and they would like for you to play. So I played with them, and it was great, and he loved it. And Greg Rowley played with Santana because I knew all the Santana guys.
Right.
I had become friends with Mike Shreve and Carlos and all guys being out there. And they said they wanted to start this new band. But now Chick had called me and asked me again for a second time. He said, come on, man, come on back and play. I said, okay, I'll do that. So I had said I was going to go back and play with Chick. But the band that they wanted to start and have me in was Jeremy.
Oh, my.
So I turned that down and went back and played with Return to Forever.
Do you have any regrets?
No, not really.
No, of course not. Yeah. So now
and that's how I got into Return to Forever.
It was amazing. It was amazing, amazing band. Now,
yeah.
So what do you think of the current music industry? What's going on today, and what do you think went wrong, or what went right, or what's going on with it?
With With pop music?
The whole music industry as a whole, whatever it is.
Well, I think basically what's happening with the music industry today is that it is an industry. And like any industry, they manufacture product. And it's no longer a musician-based business. It's a producer-based business. So what you have is you have entertainers and you have producers that take entertainers and make music with them, and the music reaches a lot of people, and they sell a massive amount of product, and this is what it's become. What's happened is that music is no longer made for music's sake. It's music is made to sell things, and it's become vocational. So where a musician who studied and has great talent becomes a great musician, great records are made. I mean, if you listen to the music in the 60s, early 70s, those pop records were fantastic because they were made by musicians, and the intent was to make music and was to push the boundaries of music. That's not the case anymore.
Right.
Now everybody's trying to fit into the mold of what was successful for another artist. I mean, like, you know, record companies have are obsolete now also.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
Record companies used to be systems where artists that had talent were developed and became iconic artists because they had great development and nurturing from a system that was built on music. That's not the case anymore. You don't have Motown. You don't have Springsteen. You don't have bands like the Stones or the Beatles. You don't have that with pop music anymore.
Right.
Some of those artists are still around.
Right.
But they've made their mark, and and what they've done has lasted for 40 years because they were great artists. That's not the case anymore.
Right.
You know, now there are always exceptions to the rule, and what I'm saying is not, you know, a thing where I'm saying this and there are not new artists or not. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is that what the music industry is predicated and built on are not the same principles that created the music industry. Yes. Now it's something else, and I don't think it'll last. It'll have to default back to what really what it was and what people really got into in terms of challenging new artists.
Right, yeah, because you know it's going to have to, because what are real musicians going to do? You know, if they can't make a living out of it, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think you nailed that right on the head. Excellent.
I had a platinum record with LL Cool J, with a piece of music that I wrote along with Bernard Wright, young great genius. Singer-songwriter and fantastic jazz musician, and Marcus Miller. Oh. And so we had a very big hit with LL Cool J with that. And then there's been some other things that they have been sampled.
All right, so there's two other Queens guys, right? LL and Marcus?
That's right.
And
Marcus, Bernard, myself, and LL, we're all Queens guys.
There you go. But what do you tell young drummers? Like, what's the most important thing about playing the drums that you got to know? Technique, feel, groove, timing? What is it?
Oh, you got to be a musician. That's the main thing I say to drummers. I mean, you know, there's been a real bad shadow cast on drummers. You know, a lot of people don't think that drummers are musicians, because of the fact that they play generic beats or whatever, and they play too loud, or they don't listen to the music. And so what I tell young drummers is to learn as many songs as they can and be able to play the music. They become musicians when that happens.
Okay. Now, do you play other instruments as well?
I play a little bit keyboards, enough to compose some music.
Right, that's what I was wondering, yeah.
I wouldn't go on stage and play no piano, no.
But I did hear something very interesting, that you have been working on an opera.
Yeah.
And what's up with that? And when can we expect to see that or hear that or what?
It's a very difficult process. I mean, I've hit somewhat of a snag because of the fact that writing libretto is one of the hardest parts. And I couldn't find anyone who really take on that task. I've got together with a few different people, and I have a few things that were done and that work, but it's a very, very difficult task. It's something that I would have to dedicate, a long time to and not do anything else. A lot of things have musically happened where I couldn't, devote all my time to that. I've been doing other things, and, I'm hoping that I can get back to it and really finish it up.
When I was researching this last night, I saw something very interesting, that you gave like a really nice tribute to Muhammad Ali, that he was really important to you. Can you tell us his importance in your life?
Well, Muhammad Ali was one of the last heroes of my generation. I mean, Muhammad Ali was somebody that we all looked up to. We definitely looked up to as young black men. He was somebody who stood for something and went through the trials and tribulations of standing for something and survived, came back, became champion again. And he was a role model. He was somebody that really meant something. I mean, Muhammad Ali, Miles Davis, James Brown, Jimi Hendrix, Malcolm X, these are people that meant something for a young black kid coming up in the 60s when all this turmoil and all this change was going on. You had these heroes that gave us something to strive for, something to achieve. And, along with Jim Brown and Willie Mays, sports heroes, these were guys that were special. But I got an opportunity to meet Muhammad Ali.
Nice.
And so that made it personal. And so, I mean, when his loss affected me really deeply because, I had lost my dad also. This is a year that is like unprecedented with loss.
Right.
And so he became something special for me. And, he defined a period in my life.
Yeah, he was so much more than a boxer. He was an icon. He was, you just grew up with him everywhere. Right. And he affected all people. Yeah. He was one of the most famous people in the world. Absolutely. For 40 years. Mm-hmm. If not the most famous. Right, and it's just, very sad that when people like Muhammad Ali pass away, there's nobody coming up to take his place. There's boxers, but there's no more Muhammad Alis.
That's right.
And the same thing with Prince. There's not going to be any Princes behind him, where there's yeah. So, and another thing that I was watching actually the Jocko documentary last night. Yeah, and you were in that too. Can you tell us some things you remember about him and what was going on with that? It's another tragic story.
When I met him, he was, clean, great, wanted to play, and we played music and basketball. That's what we did. And you know, he was a great musician, and you know, it was a very interesting experience for me because, you know, I had gotten a call to do this record, and you know, I thought that, yeah, well, he sounded great, but I never knew that it was going to be a big classic record, you know.
Right.
And it was great, and I, you know, really feel fortunate to be a part of it. I'm supposed to go work with Stanley on his next record.
Nice.
And I just finished with Wallace Roney doing 2 records with him that were fantastic, a sextet record, and then a record of Wayne Shorter music that was never recorded from back in 1966 that he wrote for the Miles Davis Quintet with Tony Williams and Ron Carter and Herbie Hancock and Miles, you know. And I have some Grammy submissions for recording that I did with a great singer from Napoli named Letizia Gambi. And there's some other records that I produced that are going to come out next year. And then the end of this year, I'm going to play with Chick again. I'm playing a couple of weeks with them at the Blue Note.
Oh, I was going to ask you that. I saw that, and I said, I bet Lenny's going to sit down on that.
Yeah, with 1 week is with Hubert Laws and Robbie Coltrane and Alicia Cohen, and 1 week is with Victor Wooten and John McLaughlin.
Oh, man. I am absolutely going to be there because he's like it's a residence. He's there from October through December. So I want to thank you for giving us all this great music and making the drums the forefront instrument, the spotlight instrument, and being instrumental in this jazz rock fusion that gave a lot of people a lot of joy. And I want to thank you for that.
Thanks a lot, man.
All right. Thanks for calling in. And
not too bad for a guy from Jamaica, Queens.
Yes. You know? I will see you at the Blue Note.
All right, then.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye. Hey, welcome back live from Dennis's house. That was our interview with Lenny White. Learned a lot about him. Great guy, great drummer. Brought the drums to the forefront. Knows everything there is to know about music. Working on an opera. You name it, he's done it. Jazz rock. Turned down an opportunity to play with Jimi Hendrix, but he's played with everybody else in the world, the greatest musicians in the world. So check him out. He's going to be with Chick Corea at the Blue Note October through December. So that's a definite. We got to check that out. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we're going to wrap this show up. And we'll see you next week. And check us out, madhousemagazine.com and live from Dennis's house. See you next week.